Hello, everyone. Rob Guest from football.london here, and welcome to the latest episode of Gold and Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me as ever, it's Alistair Gold. Ali, you well?
I am. I hope you are too. Yeah, it feels like now the international tournaments have come to a close. It feels like we can now properly look forward to club football. And I actually went to a football match at the weekend. It really feels like footballers kind of is. I almost said coming home, which would be absolutely the wrong thing to say. But football is beginning, and football is kicking off, as it were, in a club sense when you're starting to cover games again. Because let's be honest, that's kind of our bread and butter. That's what we love about our jobs is to report on actual football matches and all of the variables that come with them as well. So yeah, looking forward now, and the first official friendly within a couple of days as well.
Yes, Wednesday, Hearts, Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham first team will be travelling up to Edinburgh, and then it's QPR on Saturday, so busy week for the football club. First of all, though, the first team players have been in action over the past few days. They played a behind closed door game at Hotspur Way against Cambridge United of League One. Certainly a worthwhile exercise for Ange Postecoglou and those players involved. I know you were reporting what happened on Saturday. Very much sounded like two separate teams in either half. First half, 5-0 win. Brendan Johnson getting a hat-trick, Son at the double as well, then a 2-2 draw in the second half with Mikey Moore on target.
Absolutely, yes. Very much anyone I've spoken to kind of in and around the club, the match, whatever, they seem to kind of almost see it as two different matches within one because of the two different teams. I'm not sure whether Cambridge United saw it the same way, but certainly it appears to have kind of had that kind of feel to it from the Spurs side of things. It was a really weird kind of experience on Saturday because I was at one match while trying to find out information about a completely different match. Whereas, you and I, we're used to sometimes being at a game and keeping an eye on scores elsewhere and things like that. But to actually have to report on a second match at the same time as being at another match that's going on, the times were slightly different. The under-21s were at Enfield Town. They kicked off at 3:00, which I really liked Enfield Town. I've never been to the Queen Elizabeth II Stadium before, despite my kind of non-league background. It was just one of those I'd, for some reason, never been to. And the people there were wonderful. But yeah, that game kicked off at 3:00. The behind closed doors friendly against Cambridge kicked off at 12:00. So by the time I got to Enfield, I tried to get there about 1-ish or so because I knew I was going to have to start digging around for the behind closed doors friendly. And yeah, it was a very weird sensation of trying to kind of manage it all together. We kind of got there, so yeah, we got a fair bit. It was a difficult one because there weren't, obviously it's a behind closed doors friendly, so it wasn't like there were loads of people watching it. So you had to kind of piece it together, and then, as we always do, try to get a second source on things just in case anyone had heard something that wasn't quite right or seen something that wasn't quite right. But yes, it appears to be that Brendan Johnson hat trick, Sonny 2 goals, Mikey Moore in the second half popping up with a goal, and I've heard two different versions of this, but either way, Timo Werner was involved in the other Spurs goal. Whether it was that he got the final touch or whether he forced an own goal from Cambridge, it's one of those two. And then, I think Cambridge scored a couple of goals late on in the game. But yeah, it was interesting because two very different teams, lineups in each half, players playing all over the place in different kind of positions. We got a little. I don't know. I was almost going to say we got a little bit of an answer on where maybe Archie Gray will play, but then also quickly thinking about it as I'm going to say that it could be just purely because of the defensive options they have right now. But Archie Gray was in the second half was playing as the right back, but that may well have been that Emerson, who was also playing in the second half, was probably playing at centre back in that sense. That seems to be. So yeah, first run outs for Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall. Lucas Bergvall, more of a kind of a central midfield showing, from what I understand. What other little bits and pieces were there? Jamie Donnelly at left back. That was an interesting one. Having a fill in there which presumably, I haven't seen any photos yet, but we're presuming maybe Destiny Doggy's not quite there yet in terms of fitness for stuff like that. But from what I kind of understood, apparently Jamie Donnelly was excellent as a left back, which I guess we've spoken about this before, and using midfielders in the inverted fullback roles, they're kind of going to take to a lot of aspects of it because of the role brings them into the middle anyway. So just some of the names that I know were in each one. So first half, I know that as well as obviously Brennan Johnson, Sonny, Porro, Basuma and Kulusevski were all in the first half. Manor Solomon also played first half, which is big for him as well. Second half, you had the likes of Maddison, Werner, Skippy, Emerson, Archie Gray, as I said as well. It's not like it was an A team or a B team. He was clearly kind of spreading the experienced players across the two groups with lots of youngsters involved as well. And as we've said before, no centre backs hardly at all. There's an interesting one. I didn't get a second source on this, so I can't go at it with any real confidence. But I heard a suggestion that at one point Ashley Phillips was playing at right back, which seems odd as the only natural centre back kind of any senior nature. So whether that was just filling in for a time, when someone else came off or something, I don't know. It may well be that, like I said, he played centre back for a longer period. Who else did we have? Oh yes, the very young but highly rated Janai Byfield. He only turned 16 in March. He's a centre back, but a lot of talk about him within the academy. It's still very early days, so we're not saying he is going to he's not going to start in the Premier League or anything like that. But a lot of kind of belief in the academy that if he keeps his head down, steers clear of injuries, that the long old path that young players have, that he could be, something quite special. But yeah, for him to even be involved in that under Postecoglou, I think is quite a cool thing for him. I think he played for the under-18s a fair few times, or certainly a few times last season, despite the fact he was only 15 for much of it. So I don't think he's a big, tall lad yet. I think he's still going to obviously growing at that age, but I think he's quite stocky and muscular as well for his age. So good to see him involved. I don't believe that Jed Spence or Sergio Reguilon were involved. They've been involved in training certainly all week, as we've seen, but I don't think they were involved in the friendly. Which it's no shocking news, is it? So we know they haven't been part of Postecoglou's plans in the last year or so. When Jed came back halfway through between his two loans last season, he was with the under-21. So it's not like it's going to be the biggest kind of awful thing that Postecoglou would have said to them. They'd be well aware where their future lies. Who else? Alejo Velis, Dan Scarlett, both involved up front. I haven't heard that Richarlison was. Someone certainly spotted him on the bench at one point, which maybe he was just watching on, but I haven't heard that he actually came on. So that could just be that he's still, has been doing the rehab on his injury and he's not quite there yet. But yeah, there was loads to take from it. There's quite a few of the younger players involved. I mean, you had likes of Tyrese Hall, George Abbott, Luca Gunter came into goal. It seems like Iago Santiago and Max Robson came on late for some minutes as well. And of course, Mikey Moore getting a goal, which is absolutely no bad thing whatsoever. I keep getting told that he's going to get probably more minutes than we actually expect next season, which is great. I guess the youth kind of section is going to clear up a little bit for him with quite a few players heading out on loan. So it probably makes sense that he'll be the go-to young player. And of course, a very talented one at that as well. So yeah, it's an interesting exercise for Postecoglou, I guess.
Yeah, not a bad day for young Janai Byfield then. So, I mean, if he only turned 16 in March, he'll have only just done his GCSEs this summer.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Nothing makes you feel older than seeing how young the big kind of talents or young wonder kids are now in today's game. It was like Declan Rice, wasn't it, saying the other day that Yamal was like 12 when COVID was around. It's like, what is happening? And then, like I said, I think in the previous one, we did the piece on Tottenham's team in 2030, and like Mikey Moore will still be 22 at that stage in 2030, the year 2030. Yeah, this is it. I think where even more the game looks towards younger players nowadays because you have these incredible generational talents out there in the international game. And great news for him. And as well for the likes of Jamie Donnelly just coming in and showing he can play anywhere is great. He's going to get a loan now. That's what he'll head off and do. just very quickly, actually, on the under-21s, because I don't want to leave them out. Bearing in mind a lot of those young players I mentioned were across with the first team, they did very well on Saturday. They were playing an Enfield Town team that won promotion to National League South last season. Mainly they used their big guns in the second half, but this was a very young Spurs under-21s team with barely any of the team that won Premier League 2 last season. You had Will Lancashire up front. I would imagine he was training with the first team all week. I would imagine they probably just said, look, we would give you some minutes in the first team, but let's be honest, we've got you'll have to play up front for the under-21s, otherwise they're going to be in a bit of trouble. And he came on, scored 2 goals, celebrated his 5-year new contract with a couple of goals, which was perfect. Callum Olazese scored as well early in the game. And yeah, despite Enfield Town kind of bringing on their big guns in the second half, they did really well and they held on and won 3-2, despite the fact they had a very, very makeshift defence with a few players out of position. It's going to be a big year for Wayne Burnett, the under-21s, in terms of coping, I think. I really hope that people are a bit patient with them this season, because they'll have seen what happened last season with, the talents they had and the goals. But don't forget that the kind of nature of under-21s football is it's very cyclical, so that you have a group of terrific players, let's say, or older players, and then suddenly the next year you could have the youngest team in the under-21s division. And Jamie Donnelly and Will Lancashire are probably going to head out on loan. That's about 60 goal involvement suddenly swiped out of that team, and there's not the natural replacements for them either. Some of the, especially in the striking department, they're quite young, a lot of them. And the attacking roles, we don't know what's going to happen with Judson at Bell. He was injured this week, so he didn't play. Iago Santiago, of course, is in his 20s now, isn't he, as well? So we don't know what's going to happen with him. So yeah, I feel, I was going to say fear, but it doesn't really work with under-21s football. It's very much developmental is the main aim. But I do feel like the under-21s will have a far more difficult this season, a more inconsistent one. And yeah, hopefully fans are a little bit patient with them, because it's about developing those players rather than hoovering up the trophies, although that's always very nice, of course.
Yeah, just going back to the behind closed doors game, good to see Manor Solomon involved, because I mean his first year at Tottenham was horrendous in terms of injuries. Initially thought to be out for 3 to 4 months with that knee injury, probably expecting him back around January, February time. Didn't work out like that, bit of a setback. Ended up having the full season out, and it was just 6 games in total he played, with the last one being against Liverpool at the end of September, and he'd started the season really well. He'd also done well in the summer, and a lot's changed since Solomon's been injured, because the time of that Liverpool game, Brennan Johnson was injured for that game. He'd only played 2 games for Spurs. Obviously, since then, he's registered 15 goal involvements. So there's now Brennan Johnson as an option out wide. There's Timo Werner, who's came in January on loan initially, re-signed on a season-long loan this year. You've got young Mikey Moore, potentially, who could be, getting quite a few first-team minutes here and there over the course of the season. So there's a lot of options. It's going to be some challenge facing Manor Solomon. You've got Dejan Kulusevski, Son, Richarlison can play out wide as well. But I think that'll have just been a huge weight off his shoulders just to get back onto the pitch, because it's about 10 months almost since he last featured. So going on how well he did in pre-season last year, he'll be targeting a big summer because he quite clearly wants to be a Tottenham player going forward, and a big part of Ange's plans.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's huge for him, and I hope it doesn't put too much pressure on him to kind of have to perform too quickly and push himself, because with the setbacks that he had last season, you really want to make sure he's entirely comfortable. And I really, we'll get to see kind of more of him in the next couple of games, hopefully. And I should actually say, I forgot to mention this about Mikey Moore. Mikey Moore was playing on the right, which is quite unusual for him. He can play there, and he has, but it's not kind of what he's known for. He's maybe more known for coming in off the left-hand side, or playing as kind of a central support striker role, but mainly it's off the left. So yeah, that was interesting as well. Maybe just to keep an eye on him and see, like, it essentially opens up more opportunities for him to get minutes over the season, I guess, if he can play anywhere across that front three. But with Mana, Solomon, it's I really hope he's come back to our high level, which is going to be difficult after so long out. We've seen it with so many players have such long-term injuries and struggle for a while to get any form of sharpness back. But he did look bright before the injury all those kind of months back. Obviously the Burnley game being the big one where he was just a nightmare for them to deal with. So it is a bit of a cliche. And yes, we all want an amazing kind of transfers and all that. But if he were to come back and becomes a useful kind of player for Spurs, then it is another option among those many you've already mentioned. It's and also Brendan Johnson, a hat trick there. I'm fascinated to know. No one was able to tell me. Maybe we'll see in the Hearts game by the way they line up, but no one's been able to tell me whether it was Brendan through the middle or Sonny through the middle, because you could have gone either way. Obviously, Kulusevski was playing, so you would imagine he's on the right, unless he was playing in midfield at all. But it could be either or. It could be Sonny coming off left. Oh, actually, that was one thing I was told. A couple of people mentioned Sonny looked amazing. Apparently, he looked so sharp, like he hadn't even been away. So yeah, that's good news. That's very good news. I guess his international football, we said last time out, finished on June the 11th, so it wasn't actually that long ago. So maybe just enough rest, but not too much time that he's not still sharp and ready to hit the ground running next season. So Mana Solomon could be the old cliched new signing type thing, but just for him, it's a case of getting back some sharpness and working hard and hopefully no more knee issues.
Yeah, I suppose with Wednesday's game against Hearts, that'll give us a bit more of an indicator in terms of where Destiny Doggy is and where Richarlison is in terms of their fitness, and opportunity there for Ange. I imagine it'll be another mix and match in terms of his team. I can't imagine he's going to go full strength against Hearts, but be able to field a very strong team, and an opportunity there for Tottenham fans to get the first real glimpse of Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall, amongst others, in the Spurs shirt.
Do you think 45 minutes again for all the players? I think you would at this stage, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I imagine this stage of pre-season, it's just about getting minutes back into the legs. So maybe 45 minutes or so for each, or some might get an hour. So, but you'd hope the vast majority who do travel to Edinburgh on Wednesday get a decent amount of playing time. But then I suppose it is a bit of a quick turnaround as well for them with the QPR game being on Saturday, because it's been, a couple of months since the season ended. Spurs were pretty much used to playing 1 week apart because there was no European football, or very rarely had a Premier League midweek game. So there's going to be a bit of a quick turnaround. But yeah, plenty of opportunity there for a number of the players to get a decent amount of playing time under the belt.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think the proximity of the two games, the Hearts and QPR one, probably lends itself to 45-minute kind of for each player, pretty much. And then I guess you've got 3 on the tour, and you can start to give some players 60 minutes in those games. And then obviously the game against Bayern, a second game against Bayern, back at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is then probably, I would imagine, definitely you're going to see some of them getting 60, 75 minutes to have them ready for the following weekend. And who knows, they may well end up doing another behind closed doors friendly at some point for the players who don't get those 75 minutes, because this is the other thing. You could give a certain 11 or so players 75 minutes so they're ready for the first game of the season, and then you lose one of those to injury, and suddenly you've got everyone else who's absolutely not in a shape to play 90 minutes. So you probably do need another game in there somewhere, even if it is just on the training ground. Some people have kind of questioned, why do you have a behind closed doors game? Why are the public not allowed? Why are the Spurs play cameras not allowed in there? It's just because it's kind of like an extended glorified training session of sorts. That's all it really is. It's very early in pre-season. They're probably working still on a load of different things. Players, they probably don't want people to know maybe what players are not quite back yet and who's there and who's not. But yeah, it looks. I think all the new coaching staff are involved as well. Yeah, I just think a worthwhile exercise. I don't think there's any point looking at the fact that it's 7-2 overall or anything like that. I don't think you really look at the scoreline at all in preseason. I mean, let's be honest. Last summer, preseason was an absolute horror show in terms of one rained off game, one opposition lost, and it was they lost against West Ham, didn't they, in the first game as well?
Lost 3-2, was it?
3-2,
and then
I think it was,
we're losing against Lion City Sailors.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So it was only about football and getting the methods of Postecoglou across, and then they went into the season and like unbeaten or went on a winning run. Unbeaten is probably the better way to do it because he had the Brentford one first, didn't you? So yeah, just honestly, people always overreact to pre-season in different ways. They get really excited about how amazing all the goals they've scored against these teams. Or they go the other way and it's a disaster and we're not ready for the season. But it's just purely about minutes. So yeah, we won't get carried away about the fact that, Brennan Johnson scored a hat-trick or anything like that, or Sonny scored a couple. It's just nice, I guess, for the attacking players to be sharp and get a couple of goals. I guess, you could argue in that sense, like Richarlison last summer got a hat-trick against Lion City, didn't he? I think, if I remember correctly. I feel like that was...
I don't know. It might have been 2 or 3, yeah. I think so.
Yeah. Surprised you don't have that like on a wall chart somewhere, your Richarlison wall chart where you keep track of all of his goals.
I'll just get me a book out with all his stats in.
Has it got a big picture of him on the front?
It has, yeah.
In a half and half scarf, Everton and Tottenham.
Richie got a hat-trick. He did.
Yeah, I thought he did.
Lo
But
Celso scored as well in that game.
But it kind of helped, I guess, Richarlison. Well, they're saying that. I was about to say it was sharp going in the season, but he started off a bit iffy, didn't he, in the season because he still had the injury. So yeah, ignore that. There's a lot of rubbish, but at least we remembered that he scored a hat-trick. But yeah, in terms of the attackers, I do think it is a good thing to get the goals in their boots, as it were. And for the rest, it's just, it's about fitness, especially midfielders who we know is going to have a lot of work to do. What other takeaways do we get from the game? Lots of people very impressed with Archie Gray over the last week. Real kind of sense of what they've managed to get in him. Again, I know there's some people that really don't like it when you big up young players, but I think with Archie Gray, it's a little bit different because he played 52 games in the Championship last season. He's a £40 million player. We're not talking about some academy product that's been thrust into the first team glare. We're talking about someone who is incredibly mature, has played in, one of the toughest leagues in Europe, the Championship is physically, and the pace as well. And he's been able to handle it. And yeah, everyone I've spoken to has been very impressed with him in 2 different ways. First, on the pitch, he's incredibly talented, apparently, and he's very quick thinking brain as well in the matches. But also off the pitch, a lot of kind of really good things said about his attitude, the way he is around the staff as well. It sounds very like what a nice young man, but very kind of respectful lad and very kind of. Someone compared him. It reminded them a little bit of the way Skippy was around people when he was kind of coming through the system. Just very respectful of all staff at all levels, and which isn't always the way in football. Sometimes footballers act like stars rather than acknowledge everyone around them that kind of helps them become that. It's early days, but I do get the impression that he's going to play a lot of football next season, whether that is in midfield, whether it's at right back. I think they've realised they've landed themselves a bit of a potential superstar here, and but yeah, he's still got to adapt. It is another level up, and the same with Lucas Bergvall. Lucas Bergvall's coming from a very different league, very different level, very different pace-wise, especially. And certainly people have been impressed with the ability he's got, but also an understanding that it's going to probably take him a little bit longer than Archie Gray, even though they're the same age, because it's a bigger jump, I think, for Bergvall certainly in terms of the tempo and the pace. That's the main thing, and just not having any time on the ball that you maybe got in the, having watched a game in the Allsvenskan myself a couple of months back. You can see that there is there's more time for the players on the ball than you're going to get in the Premier League, and that's going to be something he'll adapt to, no doubt. And it's exciting to see these. Definitely could do with some more new faces in amongst that bunch, but certainly the ones that are in there thus far have all made some positive contributions.
Yeah, I think we'll see quite a lot of Archie Gray next season. I think he will surprise a number of Tottenham fans and maybe Premier League fans in general, because they've signed a really, really good player there. I think for Bergvall, as you say, he might take a bit more time in terms of his growth into the Premier League rather than Gray. But I think the Europa League might be better for Bergvall, just in terms of, coming up against European opponents, maybe similar style of play, etc., to where he's come from in the Swedish league. That might suit him a bit more.
He's played European football, hasn't he? I think, was it Europa League or Conference League? I think he did for Djurgården.
I'm not sure on that, but I think that might suit him a bit more to begin with, until he fully gets to grips with the pace and intensity of the Premier League. But two very good players there, and two who'll be looking to make a big impression for Spurs in pre-season and then going forward as well. Right, there's plenty more to discuss in the world of Tottenham Hotspur, but first of all, Ali, you can let everyone know about the benefits of using NordVPN.
Absolutely, yes. Talking about all of these players across Europe and playing around the world and obviously international tournaments, I'm sure many of them have been using NordVPN when they're abroad to with its ability to allow you to do whatever you want abroad with your devices, thinking they're back home in the UK, because it is the fastest VPN in the world, and that means there's no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. And there's also this brilliant new thing now that Nord have got, which is called Saily, which is a brand new eSIM. And what an eSIM does, essentially, it provides you with an internet connection wherever you travel. So it saves you money on those roaming fees that we all know you rack up when you head off abroad nowadays. And it also stops you having to use dodgy public Wi-Fi, which you certainly can get in some places, and people trying to get into your setups, your system, your devices, whatever you want to call it. And so Saily kind of gets around that and essentially provides you with your own way of surfing the net. And it's obviously Nord is something that I've used many times over the years, whether it's on kind of business or recreation when I'm abroad. And I will certainly be using Saily as well to save myself a little bit of money on all of those roaming fees that I always seem to rack up, because I seem to be on the wrong network contracts, which always allow me to rack them up. And also, because of Nord's partnership with the podcast, we have a cracking deal on right now. So if you go to nordvpn.com/goldguest, not only does our link give you 4 extra free months on the 2-year plan with Nord, but you'll also receive a Saily data voucher. So when you're off and about, you can use that to your heart's delight to use the internet. And also, there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And in case you missed the URL that I said there, the website address, the link is in the podcast episode description box. Very quickly as well, just on Bergvall, because I was looking up in the background while doing that, while multitasking, he has played 27 minutes in a Europa Conference League qualifier. There you go.
Did they go through then? I take it they didn't.
The one, let me have a look. They did not. No, they lost over 2 legs. He was unused on the bench in the second leg. I think that was during that period, it was last year in July, August, when I think he had a bit of an injury and he was just coming back. I think he missed a month or 2. And then from kind of the start of this season, he was like a near ever present after that, because the Swedish season is a bit different, isn't it? It's really weird how they essentially play their European qualifiers like midway through their season, because their season starts in April. But yeah, so there you go. 27 minutes of experience. He's ready to go.
Right. I think what everyone wants to know, it's in terms of transfer income into Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's been a quiet transfer window, let's say, and this is for all Premier League clubs.
Yes.
And I think Euro 2024 and the Copa America was always going to have a big impact on transfer incomings and outgoings, because it's just so hard to finalize deals when the players, either in Germany or in the United States, representing the respective countries. So now both competitions are over. You would think we should be a bit busier in terms of transfers, because there's a month to go now until the start of the Premier League season.
I hope so. Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, Archie Gray obviously is a very exciting arrival for Tottenham, but they need more bodies and more quality in other areas as well. Yeah, I just think we've said this before, I think the whole merry-go-round kind of kicks off now with the tournament's ending. I think there's a lot of players who now look at their futures and decide on where they were going, who had no interest during the tournament in doing that. Even someone like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, I saw, I think it was the Galatasaray president was talking this week, saying that, yes, he's a player that they like, but was it Galatasaray Fenerbahce? I think it was Galatasaray, saying that there's loads of clubs that are interested in Højbjerg, which, again, it has two different aspects to that. One is that Højbjerg then has to look across the moor and make a proper decision, which he would not have been doing while the Euros were going on. And, he'll have had a little break now since Denmark went out, and he'll be able to kind of really focus on that decision. But it also means that Spurs don't have to just accept anything for him if there's a little bit of competition for him. It's a little bit like the Emerson situation. Milan, from what I understand, had a bid rejected recently, a formal offer rejected for Emerson at Spurs, which, from what I understand, I don't think was too different to the verbal offer they'd made like the week previously and had already been rejected. So it's like, I don't know why they decided, hey, we put this in writing, you're really going to like it this time. But the point with Emerson is it's not just Milan. Dortmund are interested in him as well. And also clubs in the Saudi Pro League as well have been kind of keeping an eye on him for a while. So I know that some people just think, oh, it's Emerson, just get rid and all that. But that's doing such a disservice to a player who is a very solid right back. And I think in Serie A or in the Bundesliga, I think would be a terrific addition to any team. So, and he's not I don't think he's in his last year of his contract, is he? There's no reason that Spurs are looking for, I think, more than, or at least 20 million euros. I don't see any issue with them going for that, or, it's one of those difficult ones where, like, Troy Parrott obviously left a couple of days back, and some people were moaning about the price tag. But then you come to other players and you're like, just get them out. It's like you can't have it both ways. You've got to either be really bothered about the price tag or not. But I think, you get the required amount of money in that you value a player at, you can put that towards other players. It kind of all makes sense, really. But yeah, I do think the merry-go-round begins because a lot of the players, it's not only kind of Spurs players at targets or Spurs players that are heading out the door, it's also replacements for the players at clubs that Spurs might want to be signing. So a club might not be willing to give up their attacker or midfielder or centre-back that Spurs want yet, because they're trying to make sure that they can get a replacement in through the doors before their league season starts. So a lot of players now come onto the market. Certain players who impressed at the tournaments will now have new suitors that they might not have had before, which changes the game slightly. And yeah, I'm sure Postecoglou would have wanted. I would be stunned if he didn't want an extra deal or two done by now to get pre-season up and running with these new players. But we'll now see, I guess, over the 7 days or so before they fly off on the tour. You would imagine you want someone at least through the door to head off on that tour, because it's quite an important bonding experience, I think, for any new player to be involved in that. Yeah, I'm intrigued to see when we get Postecoglou to talk to first, whether it'll end up being on Wednesday in Edinburgh, or whether it's after QPR, or whether we just have to wait to the tour, which I think, I'm trying to think back, last summer, we obviously had an introductory press conference with him. But I think other than that, the tour was the first time, I think. I don't think there were any
There was no domestic games, was there?
No,
Last time it was literally straight on tour, and then coming back for the Shakhtar game, and then heading off to Barca.
Yeah, so it's kind of more of a build-up this time as well, which is helpful to his way. But yeah, it'd be nice to hear from him because it'd be interesting to see how he treads the line between kind of being pleased with what he's had so far in Archie Gray and obviously working with Lucas Bergvall, getting Timo Werner signed up for another year. But I would imagine being a little bit like, I would have liked to have had another one and like a senior player maybe done by now. I think the suggestion is that this summer is going to be more of the usual Tottenham profile and Postecoglou profile of signing kind of younger players who are also for the now and future. But yeah, I would have thought he would have wanted at least another one through the door. But yeah, we'll see what he says.
Yeah, there's been some news this weekend regarding a former Tottenham player, and that's Dele Alli, who was at Everton last season. His contract to Goodison Park, expired. So there's always been question marks over what's going to happen next with Dele Alli, because given Everton's financial situation, in terms of his original contract that he signed in what would have been January 2022, I think it was a 2.5-year deal. One of the clauses was once Ali had played 20 games for Everton, Spurs would receive a certain amount of money. Ali only played, I think, 13 in total. Didn't play at all last season because of injuries. There's been question marks over what's going to happen next with him. Even though he has been released by Everton, he has been training with the club this summer. I think that was something the club wanted to do right by the player after what he's been through over the past year or so. And I think we reported on when would they been this weekend that basically Everton have come to an agreement with Spurs, which means there would not be any immediate payment should they agree a new deal with the midfielder this summer. Football.London, we understand that there would be additional payments due to Tottenham based on certain objectives being met, as well as a sell-on clause should Dele make that move to Everton again this summer. So going to be interesting to see what happens with Dele before the new season. But he is part of the Everton squad for the trip to Ireland. Everton have a pre-season friendly against Sligo Rovers on Friday, so maybe the possibility that Dele's involved in that game.
Yeah, I think it's just positive all round, isn't it, really? Because it shows potential, I guess, intention of Everton to kind of be a bit more serious about offering him a new deal, which is great. And it maybe indicates that they've been impressed with what they're seeing so far. Very much seems like he's just been doing light training at the moment, but looks like hopefully he's getting back to the condition he needs to be in. And also, it's a win-win for Spurs, really, in that everyone at Spurs wants to see Dele back to where he was. That's the hope, that's the dream, that's what we all want. He's gone through some tough times, and hopefully this is him coming out the other side of it. But also, you can't kind of just be completely charitable, I guess, and just saying, here you go, Everton, have this player who could potentially be great for you. It doesn't really work like that, because you kind of got to honour the original contract or agreement that was in place to a degree. So while they've seemed to have written off the immediate payment that they would get if he was offered a contract, yeah, of course, there's going to be stuff down the line. But the beauty of that is putting in stuff down the line and a sell-on clause as well means that if that's met, everything's happened that we wanted with Dele. If that's happened, and if he's able to even with a sell-on clause, if he were to be able to be sold, that would indicate that he's done something to a degree that there was a value there again, which obviously the last time he moved it was for nothing from Spurs to Everton with everything else backloaded. But hopefully he meets it in a different sense for your lot, really, and just comes back to absolute where he was. We know his dream is to play at the next World Cup, which we all want to see as well. I know there was some kind of talk about, Spurs would maybe offer him if he wanted some training time there. And there were some pictures of him, I think, training with a performance coach. I think Dane Scarlett was there as well. I can't remember where it was. It wasn't at Spurs. It was at some kind of field somewhere. And there were some people saying, bring him back. My belief has always been on that. Kind of don't throw him back into the goldfish bowl that is Tottenham. He needs to go and and just essentially get himself back to anywhere near where he was is the start. Don't throw him into a club where I don't think he's going to play to begin with. I think at Everton it's going to be a gradual process for him as well. He's not going to be thrust straight into that into the midfield area for them. It's just I just hope that ends up being his level. That'd be fantastic in terms of Premier League as well, or whether he needs to kind of get some game time halfway through the season. It's all speculation right now. We don't know. We don't know what stage he's at fitness-wise and how he'll be when he comes back into contact football and proper full group sessions. But ultimately, it steps in the right direction, and that's the key thing right now.
Yeah, he just needs to get back on the pitch. That's all he needs at the moment. It's just an opportunity because, it's been 15, 16 months ago, probably, since his last appearance, and that was when he was on loan with Besiktas in Turkey. And it's now probably a deal that suits Everton if they can strike something with Ali, and then that gives him the opportunity, to play again and hopefully achieve that dream of maybe playing for England at the 26 World Cup. And if he can do that, that's going to be some story.
Yeah, I should just stress, because some people kind of pick us up on this at times. Obviously, Dele kind of doesn't want on his shirt to be called Dele Alli. And there are times when we'll refer to him as Dele Alli or Ali, because his surname doesn't any longer, it's not like it doesn't exist anymore. He isn't like, from what I understand, it's not like he's like Madonna or something like that. He doesn't have just the one name, but on his shirt, that's what he wants to be called, which is understandable. So, yeah. So I know sometimes people get a bit funny when we refer to him as Ali or Dele Alli or anything like that, but it is technically, as far as I'm aware, he hasn't removed his name by anything. So when we talk about him before, just stressing that, just because I know otherwise people have a little bit of a moan at us about it. Kind of when we're referring to a player by the full name, it's because that is actually his full name. But we absolutely understand that he wishes to be known on his shirt, and I'm guessing in just general conversation, as Dele. But yeah, best of kind of luck to him. And there's a lot of people at Tottenham kind of pulling for him and hoping that he goes on to have a terrific. He's still only, was he 28, 27, 28?
Around that age, yeah.
Yeah, he's still got so much time left in his football career if he wants it, and if his body kind of holds up to it all. Yeah, it's about motivation, which thankfully it looks like he's got back again, because I think to get yourself to this stage after all of that injury hell essentially shows determination, which is brilliant. So yeah, and I must admit, I did imagine that when he came back, it might be at a slightly different level. So if he can get back and it's at Everton's level, I think that's great. And it does signify that he's in a better place than even maybe a few of us thought, which is, yeah, terrific. Fingers crossed.
Some more positive news now, and Argentina have won the Copa America. So that means Christian Romero and Giovanni Lo Celso have more winners' medals. It's been a rather good few years for Argentina. 2 Copa Americas, 1 World Cup, won the Finalissima against Italy at Wembley a couple of years ago, and it was Lautaro Martinez with the winner in extra time yesterday, 1-0 win over Colombia. Giovanni Lo Celso playing a key role in that as well with the assist. It's not always started for Argentina at the Copa America, but he came off the bench, big impact yesterday, and something that everyone at Tottenham will be so pleased about for him, because he's had such a tough time with those injuries previously, missed out on the World Cup, and that must have been absolutely heartbreaking for him, because Argentina have been waiting a long time to get their hands on the World Cup trophy again. He was present in Qatar for the final, made to feel part of the squad, I think, like Sergio Aguero as well, who'd also probably would have been involved in it if he hadn't retired from the game. So to see him, have a telling impact on the final, it's just really, really good to see for Lo Celso.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It is. He had a tough season at Spurs. It kind of felt like it all started a year ago. We were asking him, Postecoglou, about Lo Celso, and there was this real feeling like, he's actually kind of, we weren't sure it would be one of Tongi or Gio were going to get another chance. Initially, it looked like it might be Tongi, and it was like, oh, actually, it's Lo Celso. Lo Celso seems to have really caught his eye, and Postecoglou was kind of waxing lyrical about him. Lo Celso decided he wanted to stay rather than seeking a move elsewhere. It just didn't work over the course of it. There's little flashes. There were little runner games when he scored against City as well during that period. I think it was back-to-back games he scored in, and it was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. But every time he seemed to get somewhere, it would just maybe get a little kind of niggle, a little injury problem that would just break up his flow, and he would find himself back out in the team again. Although there were definitely times towards the end of the season where you kind of thought you could have used him. You could have used him instead of Maddison in some games and things like that. And yeah, like you say, spot on. It's brilliant for him after the heartbreak of not being involved in a World Cup winning campaign. To lift back-to-back Copa Americas is just ridiculous. It really is. And yeah, he got 149 minutes across the competition. Started just the one, but he was constantly used. They just kept using him, knowing that in these key moments that he could come up trumps. That's exactly what he did. 112th minute playing that first time ball. It was a really nice pass, actually. He knew exactly what he was going to do as soon as the ball was going to come to him. And yeah, he seems to be a very popular member within that Argentina squad. And again, a little bit like Højbjerg, I think, for Spurs. I think we're to assume that Lo Celso will head off this summer. I'm sure I don't think Postecoglou would be against keeping him, but I think for the player with a year left in his contract, it makes sense now. But I think with the that kind of headline moment for him, I think you keep his price nice and high. You keep the amount of suitors nice and high as well. And yeah, good for him. But we haven't even mentioned Christian Romero, who's won it all. That's incredible. He's 26 years old, Spurs vice captain, and as you say, won the World Cup, won the Copa America twice, won the Finalissima. He started 5 of the 6 matches. He only kind of wasn't playing against Peru because they'd already qualified for the group stages, so they were resting a few of the big stars. Played every pretty much minute, I think, other than that. Played the 420 minutes in the final against Colombia. Messi says he's the best centre-back in the world. Who are we to argue with that? He is racking up the achievements, and it's experience. It's more. This is what we need at Tottenham Hotspur. You need big game experienced players that have won stuff. This is what everyone wants Tottenham to do, is win things. And when you've got a vice captain who is kind of, you've had Sonny's won the Asian Cup in the past. You've got Romero's now, 3-time international tournament winner, really. Obviously, Pearl Madison didn't quite make it on the squad this summer, but certainly, when you've got the people kind of leading the team have got that experience, that's great. Actually, completely off the left field question. Messi, can we now put that debate to rest? It has to be is he the greatest ever? Just a very quick one to throw in there, that huge question to you.
Don't ask this.
Well, I have. All right, we'll start with the easier one. Is he the best player right now in the world because of that?
What, Messi? I wouldn't say he's the best in the world right now. He's at the latter stages of his career.
Okay, that's fair. All right, well, I'll revert to my original question, make it more difficult for you. Is he the GOAT? Is he the greatest of all time? Bearing in mind, he has the World Cup, he has 2 Copa Americas, and everything he's done at club level.
Well, I always said Maradona was the best footballer in the world, but I think after the last World Cup, Messi might just shade him now. I always thought Messi needed to win a World Cup, and he basically needed to do what like Maradona did in '86, be like that pivotal figure who drags them there, kicking and screaming, and just be that key influence. And he was at the last World Cup, so yeah, probably.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about Maradona, because he also did the same for Napoli, didn't he? He kind of was the inspirational. I'm not going to say they were a one-man team, but certainly, he dragged them with his incredible ability. So, yeah, I think if you're talking about pure talent, of course, he's got to be in the kind of running for that as well. But I just think, with the international achievements now, I think Messi is probably up there. Sorry, I know this is Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, not Golden Guest Talk Messi. But as it was there, I would throw it in the conversation as well. But yeah, brilliant for Argentina, brilliant for Romero and Lo Celso, and we'll as England didn't quite get the job done, we'll kind of grab that as our Tottenham glory for the summer, and hopefully, Romero comes back and has a big season with Spurs, and Lo Celso, we'll see where his future lies.
Yeah, just quickly on the Celso, does seem
Yeah.
to be having quite a good time in the celebrations because it appears he's not got changed since the one last night. He's just got his,
Really?
shirt and shorts on from the game still. I think there's a clip of him just
You
sat in
said
the
he's just
hotel
been
room.
wandering around America. Just kind of...
No, seems to be enjoying it. Fair play. He deserves it.
I should very
Right.
quickly stress,
Go on
though,
then.
just before we move on for that, and again, I'm sorry, I know this isn't Tottenham based, the mess before that final. My word, with the crowd. We've already spoken last pod about what was happening in the stands in the Uruguay-Colombia semi-final. Some of the video footage of fans getting into that. I mean, look, we can't you can't really go too hard. Well, we can, but we can also bring up the fact that Wembley in the Euros final was also a complete mess in that regard. But it's the scary thing with that is that America's got the World Cup in 2 years, and they're going to have to really, you can't have that happening. Funny that's the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. That's the one that was named. The sponsorship deal was done by Todd Klein, former Spurs chief. Was it commercial operating officer? I can't remember his name. Title was now, but yeah, that was just some of the scenes. Like people going through like air vent kind of areas as well, weren't they, to get in? And then someone did this amazing shot of the crowd, amazing as in scary, of just, it was like the ones you saw in the past when they would fit 100,000 to a ground, everyone was standing and no one, they were all in the gangways. I saw someone saying, like, if I even want to go to the toilet at any point in the next 3 hours, I've got no chance. And that's not even taking into account the safety aspect. If suddenly there's fighting or everyone swarms forward, absolutely ridiculous. And especially in a place like America, which does big sporting events. But as I think we've said before, maybe they're not used to the rivalry aspect of it as well. Whereas maybe it's easier to, I don't know. But yeah, that's quite scary. That's going to have to be sorted out big time over the next 24 months or so.
Yeah, and I think I read there's quite a lot of people with tickets who just can't even
Oh,
get in
yeah.
either.
£2,000 tickets, and they were standing outside trying to show them through the fence and the gates and stuff.
Yeah.
And you had someone, sometimes they would get to their seat and there'd be someone sitting there going, no, sorry, mate, I'm here. It's just like, it's like when you go on a train and they've declassified it, so your reserve ticket doesn't work anymore, but to a much higher degree.
Right then, before we go, quick few minutes on the Euro 2024 final. Didn't end how England fans wanted it to be. 2-1 defeat. Oyarzabal scoring 5 minutes from time. What did you make of it?
I thought it was quite a good tactical first half. I thought they shut out Spain quite well, while maybe not offering too much of a threat themselves. And then obviously Rodri goes off at halftime, and you're kind of thinking, oh, hello, here we go, best player off. And it just completely didn't work at all. It was like, if anything, Spain just pushed on and became even more of an attacking threat. And of course, Cole Palmer, another good substitution. That was one thing I'll give Southgate. I still think you have to give him props for the subs. You could also argue that some of these players, if they'd started, could have made more of a difference, but we'll never know that. That's a bit of the unknown quantity. But yeah, it was a shame because Walker had kind of one of those moments we've seen for Spurs in the past where he'll spend 90 minutes doing so many good things, or 89 minutes doing so many good things, and there'll be one little moment where he just isn't quite as switched on as the rest of his game. And I felt like that with he just wasn't able to close down the final cross properly for the winning goal. And yeah, it's a shame. If you're going to be perfectly honest, the best team won. The best team won the tournament. They've got so many exciting players as well. England do as well. Couple of questions for you. First one, Harry Kane ended up as the Golden Boot winner. So he is the only man other than Gerd Muller to have won a World Cup Golden Boot and a European Championship Golden Boot. He shared it with 5 other people because they're doing a tie this year. What do you put his tournament down to? Is it as in the obviously it wasn't the Harry Kane we know. Is it down to the back injury he had at Bayern towards the end of the season? Is it due to a lack of sharpness because of that? Is it due to Southgate's system, or all of the above, or whatever you want, really?
Probably a mixture of all those things. He just never looked right in this tournament, and if he's been injured towards the end of last season with that back issue, then maybe that's had an impact on his game. I don't think he's helped himself at times in terms of his positioning when it comes to Southgate's formation. We've seen time and time again when he was at Spurs, he'd always drop back, but he'd always have like pace either side of him, like someone like Sonny running through. And Southgate doesn't quite have that in the England team, and especially when you move Foden and Bellingham a bit more inside to be number 10s, it just became so congested in there with Kane dropping back as well. Because I mean, you look at that Ollie Watkins goal the other day against Holland. I don't think Kane had been in the box at that point, unfortunately, because that's what we've seen all Tom. And at times when you've wanted him to be in the box, he's just not there. So it was no surprise to see him hooked after an hour, especially as well with him being on that yellow card. So just not quite gone for him so far in tournaments. We'll have to see what happens in terms of Gareth Southgate's future, and then what role Kane will have going forward. He's still going to be like England's number 9, but the new manager might be saying to him, right, stick there, you're striker. We don't want you dropping back. You're best when you're in the box.
See, I think that would be the wrong thing. I do. I think Harry
Kane... you've got to do what's best for the team, not for an individual.
To a degree, yes. But when you've got the world's probably best natural striker, who also has this playmaking side to him, I don't think there's anything wrong with building a team around him to kind of showcase that. Even like I was talking to someone earlier who made a really good case that for England, Raheem Sterling was really superb alongside Kane because of exactly that. He knew that Kane was going to spin back and he would suddenly run on, and he would get a lot of kind of joy out of doing that way. And I do wonder in this tournament whether maybe Anthony Gordon was the one who would have potentially been the unlocking of that. I do think, though, I should stress that I think the back injury was still causing problems. I do. Whether we'll ever find that out or not, this is just my opinion, not from anything I've heard, but I thought his mobility was dreadful at times. I thought he really looked to be struggling. And Southgate kind of hinted that he wasn't in the condition he wanted him to be in, which it sounded like he was putting it towards the lack of matches he'd had since he'd played a couple of friendlies. I don't know. I wonder if he was hinting a little bit more than that he needs like a proper rest of this back injury.
But if that's an issue, why start him then?
Oh, I agree. Oh, don't get me wrong. Yeah, I think if that is the case, I think Watkins has to start. Absolutely. 100%. But maybe it's the scenario a little bit like the Champions League final with Lucas Moura, in that it's Harry Kane. And you just think, oh, but even if 60% Harry Kane is still up there among the best in the world. It could be. It's very difficult to drop someone of that quality. It's maybe easier from the outside to suggest he does, like we all do as we kind of all play manager, don't we? I do feel for Harry Kane. His record is obviously now continuing with the lack of silverware, and the doubts are just not going to go until let's be honest, pretty much going to be 95% certain he's going to end that drought next season with Bayern. I mean,
You sure about that? Because I mean, Leverkusen going to be strong, and you don't know how Vincent Kompany's going to do in his first year in charge.
I just still feel he will. I think the squad that they're putting together there as well, Elise coming in alongside behind him as well. I still think at least something. There'll be a bit of silverware, so at least because
it might be German Cup.
It might be. And also, can Leverkusen do that again? Yeah, that was just the most remarkable season. If they can, and fair play, but I think it'll be very difficult to replicate that again. And I do think Bayern will be stung by what happened. Like you say, Company is a bit of a risk, but then he could end up being one of those that is a big team manager. Maybe that's where his strength lies. But yeah, I think people are kind of writing off Harry Kane far, far too early. He's 30. I think he turns 31 this month. I think towards the end of it, and the guy scored 44 goals in 45 games last season. He's going to be absolutely fine. But for England, yeah, I think I would be surprised if Southgate stays on unless there's some unfinished business he feels for him. But I am intrigued to see what happens for the next manager. Whether they build on the foundations, or whether we're looking back in like 4 years time thinking Southgate actually did quite well, didn't he? Because the football, of course, is a different kind of football. It's got a more solid defensive base, but then perhaps that's why England have done so much better than they have at previous tournaments, because they have actually had that decent foundation to it. Who do you want as the next manager?
I don't know, to be honest. I think
Sean Dyche.
No chance. No, he's staying where he is. I think Potter's favourite. Potter's favourite, Eddie Howe's up there. Poch as well. I don't know. Do you promote from within? Does Lee Carsley, the under-21 manager, get a go? Because, that's what Southgate did previously.
That's what Spain did very successfully, hadn't they? Yeah. Poch is an interesting one. I think as he's available, it would make a lot of sense. But if I'm Poch, I don't know whether I'd want to do that at this stage in his career. Would you want to give up the day-to-day of club football to do that? I don't know. Yeah, I like Eddie Howe. I certainly wouldn't be against Eddie Howe, but again, got a very good job on his hands right now as well. So maybe Potter does it, kind of falls to him as the more logical candidate.
Yeah, didn't Harry Redknapp always want the England job?
Harry Redknapp. Well, I'm sure he won't rule himself out of it. Yeah, it's Neil Warnock around as well. I'm sure he'll throw his name into the hat.
I think one of Potter or Howe. I think it'll be.
I think you're probably right there. I love the way that people are saying like Pep Guardiola and all that sort of stuff. It's like, wow. I mean, Jurgen Klopp's around.
A German in charge of England, though.
Well, they've had Italian. They've had a Swede.
Let's wait and see. I think there'll be some news regarding that soon, what happens next, because Nations League starts in September. So maybe a clean slate as they prepare for the World Cup.
Oh, don't talk about the next international break already.
Right, we'll call it a day on today's latest episode of Golden Guest. Tottenham will be back end of the week, probably Friday, to discuss how Tottenham got on at Hearts at Tynecastle on Wednesday, and then also look ahead to the QPR game on Saturday. So as ever, thank you for listening, and just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. If you go to nordvpn.com/goldguest, not only does our link give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan, but you'll also receive a Saley data voucher. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.